Welcome to the deep dive where we take a look at ideas that can really make a difference in your life. Today, we're diving into James Allen's Out from the Heart. This book is all about how our thoughts shape our lives, and I think it's especially relevant, for young adults and high school students who are just, figuring out their own paths in the world.
Yeah, it's amazing how this book, written over a century ago, still speaks to us today. I think Allen's ideas are so timeless because he focuses on the fundamentals of human experience. Our thoughts, our actions, and the consequences that follow.
And right from the start, Allen grabs your attention with that powerful line, as the heart, so is the life. Now, he's not talking about the physical heart here, but something much deeper.
Exactly. He's using the heart as a metaphor for our inner world. That space within us where our thoughts, beliefs, and desires reside. It's like the control center for everything that happens in our lives.
It's really interesting. He then uses this vivid analogy of a seed, a tree, a blossom, and then the fruit. It's like he's saying that our thoughts are like seeds. And just like a tiny seed contains the potential for a whole tree, our thoughts contain the potential for our actions, our character, and ultimately, our destiny.
What's so powerful about that analogy is that it highlights the importance of choosing the right seeds, so to speak. You see, if we plant seeds of negativity, doubt, or fear, we're likely to see those qualities manifest in our lives. But if we cultivate seeds of positivity, kindness, and courage, we'll see those qualities blossom as well.
So you're telling me if I'm constantly thinking, negative thoughts,
Yeah.
it's like I'm setting myself up for a life full of negativity.
Well, it's not about being overly optimistic or denying the reality of challenges. It's more about recognizing that our thoughts have a real impact on our experiences. Just think about it. Have you ever noticed how, when you're feeling down or anxious, everything seems to go wrong?
Yeah, now that you mention it. Yeah, it's like when you're in a bad mood, you kind of attract more bad stuff.
Well, it's not about attracting bad luck. It's about how our mindset influences our perception and our actions. When we're focused on the negative, we tend to see the negative in everything, and that can create a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Makes a lot of sense. So Alan is basically saying that our minds are way more powerful than we realize.
Absolutely. He goes on to call the mind the arbiter of life, meaning it has the power to choose to learn and to shape its own reality. It's like we're all holding this incredible tool that can either build us up or tear us down, depending on how we use it.
And we use it through our thoughts, right?
Exactly. He uses this incredible image of thoughts as threads being woven on the loom of life, creating the fabric of our character. Each thought we have, each choice we make, adds another thread to that tapestry.
Wow, that's a really powerful image. It makes you realize that every thought counts.
Yeah.
But if our thoughts are so important, how do we learn to control them? Sometimes my thoughts just run wild.
Well, Allen addresses that directly. He talks about the formation of habit and how our mental states, whether positive or negative, are actually acquired habits formed through repetition.
So it's like if I'm constantly thinking negative thoughts, it's because I've developed a habit of thinking that way.
Think about it like learning to play an instrument or a sport. At first, it's awkward and challenging. You make mistakes, you feel frustrated. But with consistent practice, those actions become easier and more natural, right? It's the same with our thoughts.
It's like he uses the analogy of learning a trade. At first, you're just a clumsy apprentice making mistakes left and right. But with dedication and practice, you become a skilled craftsman.
And here's the key. Allen argues that developing right thinking requires just as much practice as wrong thinking. If we want to cultivate qualities like patience, kindness, or courage, we need to train our minds through consistent effort, just like we would train our bodies for a marathon.
So it's not about some, magical overnight transformation. It's about putting in the work day after day to shape our thoughts in a more positive direction. But that sounds like a lot of effort.
It definitely requires effort, but think about the payoff. If you consistently practice playing an instrument, you eventually become a musician. If you consistently practice right thinking, you cultivate a more peaceful, joyful, and fulfilling inner life.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do we even begin to practice right thinking? Where do we start?
Well, Allen believes that true knowledge comes from doing, not just thinking or reading about things.
So we can't just sit around and theorize about being virtuous. We actually have to put it into practice. It's like trying to learn math just by reading a textbook. You need to work through the problems to really get it.
Exactly. He uses that example of learning a trade again. You can read all the manuals in the world, but you won't truly understand how to build a house until you pick up a hammer and start building.
It's the hands-on experience that really solidifies the learning. Think about have you ever had an experience where you learned something best by actually doing it rather than just reading about it.
Oh, for sure. Remember that time you tried to bake a cake just by following a recipe online? You might have thought you understood the instructions, but it wasn't until you got your hands dirty mixing the ingredients and figuring out the oven temperature that you really learned how to bake.
So how does this apply to cultivating virtue and right thinking? Does Alan give us some specific actions to practice?
He does. In fact, he provides a roadmap for personal transformation in the form of 3 lessons: discipline of the body, discipline of speech, and discipline of tendencies.
And within each lesson, he outlines 10 specific steps we can take to cultivate those virtues. For example, under the discipline of the body, he talks about overcoming idleness and self-indulgence. It's about taking control of our physical habits and desires.
Right. He's saying that we can't expect to have a clear and focused mind if we're constantly giving in to laziness or excessive indulgence. It's about creating a foundation of self-control that will then allow us to work on our inner world.
He then moves on to the discipline of speech, where he talks about being mindful of the words we use. He cautions against things like gossip, slander, and unkind speech.
He sees our words as a direct reflection of our inner state. If our minds are filled with negativity and judgment, that's going to come out in the way we speak to others. But if we cultivate kindness and compassion in our thoughts, our words will naturally reflect that.
So it's not just about what we think, but also about how those thoughts manifest in our actions and our interactions with others.
Exactly. And finally, he dives into the discipline of tendencies, which focuses on developing deeper virtues like unselfishness, honesty, and forgiveness. These are qualities that require a higher level of self-awareness and commitment.
This is where things start to get really interesting. He's not just talking about surface-level self-improvement. He's talking about cultivating genuine inner transformation.
And he doesn't just leave us hanging with these lofty ideas. He gives us practical tips for how to actually cultivate these virtues. For example, he suggests choosing one of the 10 steps from any of the lessons and focusing on it for a whole day, observing the effects it has on your inner state.
That's a great idea. It's like a mini experiment in right thinking.
Exactly. It's about taking Alan's ideas and putting them into action, seeing for yourself how they work.
So by practicing these disciplines, we can start to shift our inner world towards more positive qualities, like kindness, courage, and self-control.
That's the idea. It's about creating a foundation of virtue that will then radiate outward into our actions and our relationships with others. It's a lifelong journey, but Alan provides a powerful roadmap for anyone who's ready to take that journey. And it's fascinating how Alan links our inner world of thoughts and beliefs to our outer experiences. He doesn't see them as separate things, but as 2 sides of the same coin.
Yeah, it's like he's saying that our inner world is constantly shaping our outer reality. So if we want to change our lives, we need to start by changing our minds.
Exactly. He even provides lists of both negative and positive mental conditions and the kinds of lives they lead to. For example, he links hatred to suffering, lust to remorse, but also love to bliss, and purity to joy.
It's almost like he's saying that these mental states are like magnets attracting either darkness or light into our lives. If we're constantly dwelling in negativity, we're going to experience more negativity. But if we cultivate positivity, we'll attract more positivity.
Yeah, it's not about ignoring or suppressing negative emotions. It's about recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond to them. We can choose to dwell in them, or we can choose to cultivate more positive and constructive states of mind.
So how do we make that choice? It's easy to say think positive, but how do we actually do it when we're faced with challenges or negative thoughts?
Well, remember that idea of mental habits we talked about earlier? Just like we can develop habits of negative thinking, we can also develop habits of positive thinking. And Alan gives us some tools for doing just that.
You mean those 3 lessons, discipline of the body, discipline of speech, and discipline of tendencies?
Exactly. Those lessons provide a framework for cultivating virtue in all areas of our lives.
But some of those virtues, like unwavering rectitude or unlimited forgiveness, sound really difficult to achieve. How are we supposed to live up to such high standards?
Well, it's important to remember that Alan is not advocating for perfection. He understands that we're all human and that we're going to make mistakes. It's not about never having a negative thought or never stumbling along the way. It's about the overall direction we're moving in.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And it's about remembering that we have the power to choose our thoughts and actions in every moment. Even if we've made mistakes in the past, we can always choose to start fresh right now.
That's reassuring to hear. It can feel overwhelming to think about changing our entire mindset. But if we can focus on making small, consistent choices in the right direction, That feels more manageable.
Absolutely. And remember, Alan's not just talking about some abstract concept of right thinking. He's talking about cultivating virtues that lead to a more fulfilling and meaningful life. He sees a direct link between the qualities we cultivate in our minds and the quality of our lives.
So if we cultivate kindness, we'll experience more kindness in our lives. If we cultivate courage, we'll feel more courageous.
Well, it's not about some magical formula, but think about it this way. If you're constantly focused on what you lack, you're going to feel a sense of lack in your life. But if you cultivate an attitude of gratitude and appreciation for what you have, you're going to experience more abundance and joy.
That makes a lot of sense. It's
Yeah.
like shifting your perspective from what's missing to what's already present.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective can have a ripple effect on all areas of your life. It can impact your relationships, your career, your health, your overall sense of well-being.
So what you're saying is that this book isn't just some theoretical treatise on self-improvement. It's offering a practical guide for creating a better life.
That's exactly what I find so compelling about Alan's work. It's not about escaping from the world or denying the reality of challenges. It's about equipping ourselves with the inner resources to navigate those challenges with more grace, wisdom, and resilience.
And those inner resources come from cultivating the right mental habits through consistent effort and practice. It's like we're building our own inner fortresses of virtue.
That's a great analogy. And you know, one of the things that Alan emphasizes is the importance of taking responsibility for our own mental states. He doesn't believe that we're simply victims of circumstance or that our thoughts are just random occurrences.
He's saying that we have a choice in what we think and how we feel.
Exactly. We have the power to choose which seeds we want to plant in the garden of our minds.
Okay, so we've talked about the power of thought and the importance of cultivating virtue. But there's one more piece of Alan's philosophy that we haven't really touched on yet, and that's the idea of action.
Right. Alan was a big believer in the idea that true knowledge comes from doing, not just from thinking or reading about things. He even argues against simply reading or theorizing about virtue.
It's like he's saying, don't just talk the talk, walk the walk.
Exactly. You can't truly understand something until you've put it into practice.
That reminds me of the time I tried to learn how to play guitar just by watching videos online.
Hmm.
I thought I was getting it, but when I actually picked up a guitar, I realized how much I didn't know.
It's the same with virtue. We can read all the books in the world about kindness, compassion, or self-control, but until we actually start practicing those qualities in our daily lives, we're not going to fully understand them or experience their transformative power.
So it's not enough to just have good intentions.
Yeah.
We have to translate those intentions into concrete actions.
Absolutely. And Alan believes that it's through action that we truly learn and grow. It's through our experiences in the world, through our interactions with others, that we develop our character and become the best versions of ourselves.
So he's not advocating for some kind of passive contemplation or withdrawal from the world. He's calling us to engage in the world with intention and purpose, using our understanding of virtue to guide our actions.
Exactly. He's saying that the world is our classroom and that every experience, every interaction is an opportunity to learn and grow.
It's like he's challenging us to step out of our comfort zones and put our values into practice, even when it's difficult.
And he assures us that the rewards are worth the effort. He believes that by living a life of virtue, by aligning our thoughts, words, and actions with our highest ideals, we can experience true happiness, fulfillment, and inner peace.
That sounds amazing, but also a bit daunting. It's like he's setting a really high bar for how we should live our lives.
Remember what we said earlier about progress, not perfection? Alan understands that this is a lifelong journey and that we're all going to stumble along the way. The important thing is to keep moving in the right direction, even if it's just one small step at a time.
So how do we even begin to take those steps? What does it actually look like to put Alan's teachings into practice in our daily lives?
Well, he offers some specific guidance in his book outlining 10 steps for cultivating virtue within each of those three areas we talked about: discipline of the body, discipline of speech, and discipline of tendencies.
Okay, let's dive into those 10 steps and see how we can apply them to our own lives. I'm especially curious about that idea of unlimited forgiveness that you mentioned earlier. That sounds like a tall order, especially in today's world where there's so much conflict and division.
Yeah.
Forgiveness, it's a concept we hear a lot, but, you know, actually putting it into practice can be really challenging. It's like, intellectually, I get it, but, when someone really hurts me, it's so hard to just let it go.
It's definitely one of the more challenging aspects of Alan's teachings, but it's also one of the most transformative. He sees forgiveness as essential for spiritual growth and inner peace. He even says that holding on to resentment and anger is only creating suffering for ourselves.
Right. Makes sense. It's like
Yeah.
we're carrying around this heavy weight of anger or resentment, And, it's weighing us down, preventing us from moving forward.
Right. He encourages us to let go of past hurts and to choose to move forward with compassion and understanding. It's a challenging practice, but one that Alan believes is crucial for cultivating true happiness.
Yeah, but what about when someone has really wronged us? Doesn't forgiving them let them off the hook?
Well, forgiveness isn't about condoning someone's actions or saying that what they did was okay. It's about freeing ourselves from the grip of anger and resentment that can poison our own hearts.
So it's more about our own inner state than about the other person.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that everyone makes mistakes, including ourselves, and that holding on to grudges only keeps us trapped in negativity. Forgiveness allows us to break free from that cycle and to create space for healing and growth.
Okay. And you said that Alan believes this is especially important in today's world.
Well, he wrote this book over 100 years ago, but his insights on forgiveness are even more relevant today with all the conflict and division we see in the world. His teachings offer a path towards greater understanding, empathy, and reconciliation.
Right. It's like he's reminding us that we're all interconnected and that choosing forgiveness is not a sign of weakness, but of strength.
It takes real courage to let go of anger and choose love instead. It's a decision we have to make again and again, not just for the sake of others, but for our own well-being.
It's like we're choosing to heal ourselves rather than letting those wounds fester and, infect our lives.
That's a great way to put it. And one of the things I find so inspiring about Alan's work is that he doesn't just present these lofty ideals, he gives us practical tools for putting them into practice.
Like those 10 steps we talked about.
Exactly. He provides a roadmap for personal transformation, a step-by-step guide for cultivating virtue in all areas of our lives.
And he reminds us that we have the power to choose our thoughts, our words, and our actions in every moment. We're not just passive recipients of fate. We're active creators of our own destinies.
And the beauty of it is that even small changes in our thinking can have a ripple effect on our entire lives. If we can shift our focus from negativity to gratitude, from judgment to compassion, from fear to love, we can create a more peaceful, joyful, and meaningful existence, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us.
So, to wrap things up, James Allen's Out from the Heart is a powerful reminder that we have the power to shape our lives from the inside out. By understanding the connection between our thoughts, our actions, and our destiny, we can take control of our lives and create a future filled with purpose and meaning.
And it all starts with that one simple but profound truth. As the heart, so is the life.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into James Allen's work. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. If you want to continue on this journey of personal growth, we encourage you to visit www.ultimatemasters.org coaching or WhatsApp, plus 256-771-324-119 for further guidance and resources.
And don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive and share this episode with anyone who might benefit from Alan's timeless wisdom. We release new episodes every day, so be sure to check back tomorrow for another insightful exploration.
Thanks again for listening. And remember, even the smallest shift in your thinking can have a profound impact on your life. What one small change will you make today to start creating a better tomorrow?